It wasn't just another family movie. It was macabre, gothic, a comedy about death, passion, and strangeness that somehow captured the world's heart.
Doris Gomez.
Oh no, he's afraid of him.
But behind the shadows of that candlelit mansion, the making of the Addams Family was stranger than the movie itself. There were lawsuits, production curses, near-fatal accidents, and suffering so real it bled through the screen.
He's at the door!
This wasn't Hollywood magic. It was chaos stitched with cobwebs and willpower. From costumes that nearly crushed their stars to endings rewritten in secret, the Addams Family wasn't supposed to work, and yet, against every odd, it became a legend. These are 20 weird facts about the film that refused to die, bringing its creepy, kooky clan back from the grave. Unlike many family films of the era, the Addams Family used real, often dangerous props. Gomez's swords weren't stage toys. They were sharpened rapiers, gleaming under the lights. Even Wednesday's guillotine wasn't a harmless gag.
For festa!
Though rigged, its heavy blade could still crush fingers if mistimed. Crew members admitted they held their breath every time Christina Ricci placed Pugsley beneath it. Ricci, however, wasn't fazed. She thought it was hilarious. Axes, knives, and crossbows scattered through the mansion were just as authentic, lending the film weight but also constant risk. Looking back, it's astonishing how close a family movie came to putting its actors in real danger. The Addamses may have flirted with death for laughs, but the danger was no joke. In the film, Gomez and Fester duel with rapiers, slashing and laughing in gothic madness. On screen, it looks choreographed. Off screen, it was chaos. Raul Julia threw himself so wildly into the fight, his blade came inches from slashing Christopher Lloyd's face. Stunt coordinators begged him to slow down, but Julia refused. Gomez didn't hold back. Sparks flew, blades bent, crew braced for blood. Somehow no one was injured. The one slip could have ended filming. Julia believed Gomez should fight as though his life depended on it. Wild, exuberant, drunk on danger and love. Lloyd trusted him, leaning into the mayhem even as blades whistled past. Crew later recalled their knuckles going white as they watched. That's why the duel still crackles. It wasn't safe fencing. It was survival. The role fit Houston like a coffin lid, but it came with hidden torture devices. To create Morticia's hypnotic eyes, makeup artists taped her temples back with metal hooks, pulling her skin tight all day. Add to that a corset so crushing she could barely breathe, nails that snagged everything, and wigs weighing down her head.
We need more of them.
Houston confessed she often collapsed in agony after filming, yet none of that showed on screen. Morticia glides like silk, eyes locked like fangs. Her icy calm wasn't just performance, it was survival. Tarantulas, scorpions, and other exotic pets brought in by animal wranglers. These weren't props, but trained insects and arachnids, carefully placed on tables, furniture, and even costumes while the cameras rolled. Actors admitted they were unnerved, especially Christina Ricci, who had to sit motionless as a tarantula crawled across her doll. Though handlers insisted the danger was minimal, no one could shake the feeling of live fangs and stingers inches away. The authenticity made the Addams house feel alive, a gothic home teeming with creatures that belonged just as much as the family did. Early test screenings revealed just how unsettling the Addams children could be. Wednesday calmly plotting Pugsley's execution, guillotine blade poised above his neck, had parents gasping in discomfort. Some argued the film was too cruel for kids, worried it crossed from comedy into nightmare. Executives considered trimming the darkest jokes, even softening Wednesday's icy demeanor. But teens and young adults loved it, laughing hardest at the bleakest gags. Paramount gambled on keeping it intact, and Wednesday became a cultural icon. The very darkness that scared parents became the spark that defined her legacy. But for Felix Silla, the role was suffocating torture. The costume buried him under layers of synthetic hair, heavy and sweltering under studio lights. With only a tiny slit to see through, every step was a balancing act, every line muffled beyond recognition. Crew had to rush in between takes to fan him and lift the suit so he could breathe. The heat was so intense he often staggered once freed, gasping for air. Yet despite the ordeal, Silla infused it with charm, bouncing, waddling, waving his cane with comedic flair. Audiences never saw the sweat or strain. They only saw a lovable oddity whose gibberish and antics brought levity to the macabre. Behind the curtain, it was a portable sauna that tested an actor's endurance. On screen, he was pure Addams magic. It was Barry Sonnenfeld's first time directing a feature film, and the pressure nearly broke him. Between studio collapses, constant lawsuits, and technical nightmares, Sonnenfeld fainted on set from stress more than once. Crew members recalled the eerie sight of the Gothic mansion standing silent while their director was carried away. Yet each time Sonnenfeld returned, steadier and darker, almost like the mansion had claimed him as one of its own. Morticia's hypnotic glow wasn't just acting, it was technology. Cinematographers gave Anjelica Huston a signature spotlight, a thin beam that tracked her eyes in nearly every scene. It was a classic Hollywood trick, once used for Greta Garbo, designed to make her appear otherworldly.
But we are Addamses.
But executing it was painstaking. Every camera setup had to be aligned so the beam caught Houston's eyes exactly. If it slipped, the magic vanished. Crew members spent hours adjusting reflectors just for a few seconds of footage. Houston admitted it could be frustrating, but the result was undeniable. Morticia didn't simply appear in a room. She shimmered, glowing like a ghost or goddess. That halo of light elevated her from character to icon, making every glance unforgettable. Morticia wasn't just filmed. She was immortalized, adored by the camera like a legend reborn in shadows. On screen, Thing is a loyal hand, scuttling across pianos and tables with charm. Behind the camera, it was a nightmare to film. Actor Christopher Hart spent hours crammed into boxes and crawl spaces, his arms sticking through holes while the rest of his body stayed hidden. To erase him, the effects team had to composite shots frame by frame. Painstaking work in the pre-digital era. Hart often joked he lived like a mole underground, while his hand got all the glory. Still, he gave Thing personality with every flick and gesture, turning what could have been a gimmick into a true character. Audiences saw more than fingers. They saw loyalty, humor, and emotion. It was artistry born from discomfort, proving that even one hand could steal the spotlight if the performance had heart. Jimmy Workman, cast almost by accident, ended up in some of the film's wildest stunts. He was strapped into electric chairs, dangled from ropes, tossed around in contraptions. Crew admitted they were terrified he'd get hurt, but Workman loved it, grinning through explosions and chaos. Watching Pugsley suffer was funny on screen. Off screen, it was nervous laughter from adults hoping he'd make it through. The Addams Mansion didn't just disappear. Built as a towering facade with labyrinth interiors, pieces were repurposed for other Paramount projects. Staircases repainted, dining halls recycled. But crew swore it resisted demolition. Tools vanished, scaffolding collapsed, lights flickered only on that set. Whether myth or not, many believe the house refused to die. Even today, fragments are rumored to exist in private collections. Banisters, chandeliers, gargoyles. Like the family it housed, the mansion scattered into the world, eternal in pieces. In the finale, Gomez and Fester perform the bizarre mamushka dance. What remains is short, strange, and oddly touching. But the original version was much longer. A wild, choreographed number with stomping, singing, and crowd participation. Raul Julia trained exhaustively, Christopher Lloyd threw himself into it despite heavy makeup, and the two treated it as a sacred ritual.
Hey, let's dance the dance of brotherly love.
But test audiences didn't know what to make of it. Many laughed in the wrong places. Others shifted uncomfortably. Paramount panicked, fearing it would derail the finale. Most of the sequence was cut. Julia and Lloyd begged for it to remain, but compromise was inevitable. What survives is a sliver of a bigger spectacle, buried in the editing room. A ghost dance almost lost forever. Even before release, the Addams Family faced a legal curse. David Levy, producer of the 1960s show, sued Paramount, claiming he owned the rights. The case dragged through courtrooms, threatening to delay or kill the film. Posters were printed with disclaimers. Rumors spread it might never premiere. The legal web stretched back to Charles Addams' New Yorker cartoons, whose rights had been sold, split, and contested for decades. By the time filming began, ownership was a tangle. Paramount settled quietly, but insiders admitted they weren't sure the movie could even be marketed without risking injunctions.
As an Addams, yes, I do.
When it finally premiered, it felt like the film had clawed its way out of a grave of paperwork. In early drafts, Fester wasn't the real Fester, just an imposter. Test audiences hated it. They wanted the family reunited, not tricked. The ending was rewritten and reshot, cementing Fester as truly one of them. Without that change, the film would have ended bitter and alienating. Paramount staged reshoots, sinking more money into an already over-budget project. Most audiences never knew how close they came to watching a completely different conclusion. The fiery reunion wasn't inevitable. It was born of late-night edits and desperate rewrites. Julia didn't see Gomez as a caricature, but as a passionate Latin lover who adored his wife. He practiced fencing, rolled every R like molten silk, and treated Houston like a goddess on and off screen. His children, fans of the original show, urged him to take the part. On screen, he radiated joy, obsession, and danger. Friends say his health was already fragile, making Gomez feel like Julia pouring the last of his immense charisma into a role that defined him. It became his legacy, a man larger than life, burning with brilliance. It's hard to picture anyone but Christopher Lloyd as Uncle Fester, but casting him wasn't obvious. The studio searched for someone who could be creepy, yet sympathetic. At first, Lloyd seemed too tied to Doc Brown's manic energy, but he threw himself into the role, shaving his head, hunching his frame, and delivering every laugh with wounded innocence. His Fester was more than comic relief. He was tragic, a lost soul desperate for belonging. That balance of menace and vulnerability won everyone over. Crew noted how he could flip from deranged to childlike in an instant,
The Bermuda Triangle.
keeping audiences off balance. By the time cameras rolled, there was no question. Lloyd wasn't just playing Fester, he had disappeared into him. What began as an unlikely casting choice became one of the most defining performances of his career. Gomez's model trains were no easy gag. Miniatures had to be rigged with explosives, timed to crash in slow motion. Crew joked they were making a Michael Bay movie inside a gothic comedy. One mistimed detonation could ruin a day's shoot. Weeks of sweat and smoke went into seconds of footage. The final result, Gomez laughing as trains explode, looked effortless, but it nearly ran the production off the rails. When the first trailers dropped, audiences saw Morticia and Gomez deliver a fiery line about being Addams, but that scene wasn't in the film. It had been shot exclusively for the trailer.
Showtime!
A marketing trick to lure fans. But audiences felt cheated. Some demanded refunds, convinced they'd been duped. Looking back, it feels like a perfect Addams prank, promising something you couldn't have. Executives didn't believe a gothic black comedy would sell. Marketing was minimal. Merchandise non-existent. But when the film opened, audiences swarmed. The Addams Family grossed nearly $200 million worldwide. Shocking Paramount. A quirky, risky film had become a pop culture juggernaut.
His costume.
It is a wonderful hat.
Spawning sequels, cartoons, and endless Halloween costumes. The Addamses didn't just survive, they conquered. Though a hit, many fans argue the sequel, Addams Family Values, is superior. Sharper, darker, more daring. Writer Paul Rudnick leaned into biting satire, targeting politics and family dysfunction. Christina Ricci's Wednesday became the film's dark heart, her Thanksgiving play speech achieving pop culture immortality. Critics who dismissed the first film praised the second, but without the bruises and chaos of the 1991 original, there would have been no sequel. The Addams Family stumbled so values could dance. Together, they became eternal staples of Gothic cinema. It was cursed, chaotic, stitched together from lawsuits, rewrites, and near disasters. And that's exactly why it worked. The Addams Family wasn't just creepy and kooky. It mirrored the family it portrayed. Strange, broken, but more powerful because of it. Raul Julia gave his soul, Houston suffered for her art. Ricci carved an icon out of silence and shadows. The movie shouldn't have survived, but survival is the Addams way. And 30 years later, it still refuses to die. So what do you think? Which fact shocked you the most? And what movie should we dig up next? Drop your answers in the comments, and if you enjoyed this trip into the Addams Mansion, subscribe and ring that bell, because the next story might be even stranger.